Research shows that more than half of people who don't save money, it's not because they're low income, it's not because everything's too expensive, it comes down to a set of mental patterns they're not even aware of. In this video, I want to pull those patterns out by the root. Stay with me till the end. The human brain has been evolving for 200,000 years, and during all that time, whatever you had to consume it right then and there. You didn't store food because it would rot. You didn't hold on to resources because they'd get stolen or lost. Your mind learned that now matters more than tomorrow. That was a survival mechanism, a smart strategy for that era. Now take that same brain and drop it into the modern world. A world that's asking you to hand over your money today to some version of yourself 30 years from now, who might be alive, might not be, whose money might hold its value, might not. The brain goes, "This doesn't make sense." It would rather buy something real right now. Something it can touch, something it can feel. Behavioral economists call this hyperbolic discounting. It means we value rewards in a nonlinear way. We see a nearby reward as massively bigger than a distant one. Multiple experiments have shown that people are willing to take a smaller amount of money right now rather than wait a month for a larger one. That's not stupidity. That's an old algorithm that's still running. Richard Thaler, another Nobel Prize winner in economics, calls this present bias. We constantly underestimate the future. We always think that our future self will somehow figure it out. But that future self has the same brain. And when the future becomes the present, the whole game plays out again. Think about how many times you've said, "Starting next month, I'll save." And then next month came, and you said it again. That loop isn't a character flaw, it's a predictable output of a brain that was never designed for long-term financial planning. There's an important discovery here from Hal Hershfield, a psychologist at UCLA, who showed through brain imaging studies that when people think about their future selves, the part of the brain that activates is the same one we use when thinking about strangers. Meaning neurologically, you have no sense of identity connection with who you'll be in 30 years. That person is a stranger. And people don't make sacrifices for strangers. This is the first root cause, and it's a big one. The problem isn't willpower, the problem is the architecture of the brain, and until we understand that, any attempt to save through sheer willpower alone is set up to fail. Shlomo Benartzi, a behavioral economist, has spent years studying why people don't save despite having good intentions. His conclusion is that the biggest enemy of saving is active decision-making, meaning if you ask people to consciously decide every month to save, most won't. But if you design the system so that saving is the default, the savings rate multiplies several times over. What does that mean exactly? It means the problem isn't intention. The problem is the design of the decision-making environment. Our minds naturally drift toward whatever the default is. If the default is spending, we spend. If the default is saving, we save. The simplest thing you can do is open a separate account and set it up so that a fixed amount moves there before you ever see the money, before your brain has a chance to make plans for it. Because money you never see, you never spend. Spending money, from a neurological standpoint, is an emotional regulation response. When you're stressed, when you're bored, a small purchase calms the brain for a few moments. Dopamine gets released. The sense of control comes back. It works like a painkiller. This is what's called retail therapy. And research shows it's not just a casual phrase, it's a real neurological mechanism. A study in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that shopping genuinely restores a temporary sense of control and power. So, where's the problem? The problem is that this painkiller is addictive. Every time you calm yourself down this way, your tolerance threshold drops a little lower. Next time, you need that relief sooner. And this cycle keeps you in structural poverty, even if you have a decent income. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist, has been working for years on something he calls money scripts. He says each of us carries a set of unconscious beliefs about money that formed in childhood, from watching how our parents behaved, from sentences we heard around the house, from the family's direct financial experiences. Three of the most common ones. First, money is the root of all evil. People with this belief unconsciously run away from accumulating money because in their mind, having a lot of it equals becoming a bad or greedy person. Second, there's never enough money. These people, even when they have enough, don't feel secure. They're constantly anxious, and sometimes that anxiety stops them from even starting. Third, money is how you show love. Spending on others is an act of affection, and these people don't keep it for themselves because they feel guilty doing so. These scripts run silently in the background, like software you didn't install but can't uninstall. And the first step to overriding them is simply knowing they exist. There's a concept called akrasia. It comes from ancient Greek philosophy. Aristotle was the first to point to it. It means that a person knows exactly what they should do and does something else entirely. They know they should save. They know it matters, but they don't do it. This is a 2,500-year-old problem. Aristotle thought it came from weakness of will, but modern neuroscience has a more precise answer. The problem comes from a conflict between two brain systems that Daniel Kahneman named System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, emotional, automatic, and it's making decisions right now. System 2 is slow, analytical, and logical. When you say, I should save money, that's System 2 talking. But when money lands in your hand and you feel a sudden temptation, System 1 kicks in, and it wins almost every time. Why? Because System 1 uses less energy, and the brain has a natural tendency toward energy conservation. And because it operates on emotion rather than logic, and emotions usually win in split-second decisions. Here's something worth sitting with. System 2 makes your financial plans on Sunday night. System 1 spends the money on Wednesday afternoon, and they barely talk to each other. Research on a phenomenon called ego depletion shows that willpower is a limited resource. By the end of a long day, after grinding through work, clashing with your boss, sitting in traffic, your willpower is exhausted. And that's exactly the moment when the chances of an impulse purchase or a bad financial decision shoot up. Roy Baumeister, who pioneered research in this area, found that people who had to resist temptation earlier in the day made significantly worse decisions later on. Every act of self-control draws from the same pool. And by evening, that pool is nearly empty. So what does this mean? It means relying on willpower to save money is like relying on willpower to stop breathing. The brain simply isn't built for it. The solution is to eliminate the decision entirely. Automate it, schedule it, make it invisible. When saving isn't a decision anymore, the brain can't get in the way. You stop fighting your own wiring and start working with it instead. People who don't save often have a broken relationship with time. They've split life into two parts. Now, which feels real, and the future, which feels like a story. When the future seems that foggy and far away, the mind naturally prefers to stay in the present moment. But here's the thing, that fog isn't real. It's a perception created by a brain that never had to think beyond the next season. One way to cut through it is to make the future more concrete and personal. Write down what you want your life to look like in 10 years. Not vague goals, specific ones. Where do you live? What do you do on a Tuesday morning? What does your bank account say? The more vivid the image, the more real that future self becomes. And the more real they are, the harder it is to steal from them. You can also use a simple question whenever you're about to make an unnecessary purchase. What would the version of me 10 years from now think about this? That one question activates System 2 and creates a small gap between feeling and decision. And that tiny gap can change everything. Nobody has ever started saving because someone told them, you need to save, because the real issue is that our brains are wired differently. A kind of wiring that's 200,000 years old and doesn't get rewritten by a single overnight decision. But when you know exactly where you're losing the game, you can change the rules of the game, not with more willpower, with better design. Set the default, automate the transfer, make saving invisible and spending harder. Build a system that works even when you're tired, distracted, or emotionally drained, because that's when it matters most. Take care of yourself until the next video.